Hey guys, welcome back. It's been a while since my last video. I'm sure you guys all miss me very much, but honestly, I haven't really been playing a lot of chess lately, last couple of months. But I'm trying to get back into it, and I thought I haven't shown you guys one of my games in a while. So I thought I would change that today. This is a game I played actually yesterday, and I thought it was a pretty interesting game. A lot of times when I'm like learning or hearing other people playing like masters, they say things like, for example, if you castle on opposite sides of the board, you always have to attack your opponent's king. You got a pawn push. So this game, I guess, is an example of me kind of trying to do that, um, succeeding, kinda. But it's interesting try, and I was kind of just going aggressive and seeing what would happen in this game. So I'm playing with the white pieces here, and I just started with e4, c5. So this is a Sicilian opening defense for black. I play knight f3, knight c6, and I'm attacking in the center. I don't really want to deal with all the crazy lines in the Sicilian. There's a lot of theory and stuff, and I'm not that knowledgeable about it. So I want to keep the game simple if I can. So I kind of want to clear the board right away. So I give up one of my center pawns, but I have some pieces developed and I feel comfortable here. So I play knight to c3, and my opponent plays a6. I think here he's kind of trying to prevent me moving my bishop out and pinning this knight. So I move my bishop to f4. And I wouldn't say this is necessarily a trick, but it looks like black should just be able to push this pawn here. And that's what I was hoping he would do, and that's exactly what he did. Because it looks like a fork, and you can see that this knight here is defending his pawn, but there's a little term in chess called attacking the defender, or removing the defender of a piece, or a pawn in this case. So this doesn't quite work for black. So I just went ahead and took his knight, so I removed the defender of this pawn. And then once he took back, I just won a free pawn here. So up a pawn in the beginning, not a huge deal. Okay, I developed my queen, and I'm trying to go aggressive here in this game. So I have a feeling, most players castle kingside. I wanted to castle opposite side. I wanted to start immediately creating imbalance in the position. So I got my queen out of the way, preparing the queenside castling, and I've got two attackers here on the knight. Okay, he moves his bishop out, preparing to castle, and I castle queenside. Notice also, when I do that, I'm lining up my rook with his queen. A nice bonus there. So he castles kingside, and already we have opposite side castling. And what do they always say? Well, start pushing your pawn, start attacking the king, your opponent's king, when this happens. I don't really know exactly, the details of like the perfect play to accomplish this, but I'm trying to improve at it. So let's go for it. Okay, so I develop my bishop here. I'm already kind of pinning this pawn and pressuring the king a little bit more, so that's a good developing move. And my opponent here plays bishop b7. I guess I'm not really sure why he made this move. I don't like it because this bishop is not looking too hot over there. Just blocked in by his own pieces, his own pawns. So not a great developing move. And here we go. I start moving my pawns forward. So that's step one. And my opponent plays d6. And of course, looking back at this, he actually cannot take this bishop, because if he does, he's hanging his queen. And that's kind of the reason why you want to line these pieces up. But of course, during the game, I just totally forget this. Don't want the guy to take my bishop, so I just traded, not understanding that this really isn't an actual threat in the moment. So I just went ahead and took the knight there with the bishop. I didn't want to like stunt the momentum of this attack that I'm building up. So here, I move my queen out of the way. I play my queen to d3. I'm lining up a double attack here. His queen's defending here, but I was expecting him to move back with the bishop, and maybe I could continue pushing these pawns. Maybe move this rook over, maybe move the knight over as well. That was kind of like my idea here. But of course, he can also move the bishop forward, which I didn't foresee when I made this move. So I can't really play this move yet because this pawn's just hanging. So I move my other pawn. I move my h pawn to h4. Okay. Now my opponent moves the queen to b6. And he's eyeing this pawn here on f2, but I'm also a little bit wary of here. I feel like, so if I ever move this knight out of the way, then he's got a double attack here. He's going to be threatening my king a great deal. So I feel like it's kind of two purposes to this move for black. Obviously, he knows I'll see this, but he's kind of putting some more pressure on my king side as well here. So I move my pawn up to f3, just kind of getting out of the way of the scope here, the queen. And he starts pushing his pawn on my king side. So, or I guess queen side, but technically it's my king's side of the board now. So I continue moving my pawns forward. I play h5. And he stops that with h6. And I contemplated playing g5 here, but thought it wasn't quite time for that yet. So I actually moved my rook to f1 because I want to start pushing this pawn. If I can push this pawn up and then this pawn, then I feel like I'm going to be cooking a little better. Going to be providing or starting up a better attack here. So that was my plan. Now he hits me with a check, and this is also very annoying for me. Not because of the check necessarily, because I just moved my king out of the way, but I can't push this pawn now. This pawn is basically being blockaded by the bishop, which I didn't like a whole lot. So, and okay, after I moved my king, he moves to a4. So he's starting to get even closer here. And I don't want him to get to a3. If he does, let's say he moves to a3, I can move my pawn up, prevent checkmate, obviously, because, you know, that queen could just take the pawn at that point. But I didn't really want to do that, so instead I just pushed a3 instead. I want to stop this pawn in its tracks. And you can also see here that there's no other pawns on this file for him, so he can't really put a whole lot more pressure with pawns yet. So I'm banking on that. And he centralizes his rook. And now I move my knight to e2, attacking the bishop, because I really want to get rid of this bishop. But of course, he can also just, you know, move his bishop back to e5. So there's a little bit of probably inaccuracy or, you know, some issues here with some of my moves not being perfect. But I just went ahead and played c3. So you can see I moved 2 pawns in front of my king. And what this really does is it's kind of weakening the light squares around my king. And that's something you always have to consider. And I did consider that, but I didn't want to move my knight back. And the other thing I was thinking of was look at this bishop. So when you talk about weakening light squares, a lot of time you're talking about weakening those squares for your opponent's bishops. And you're not wanting to get your opponent's bishops in, you know, in these cracks in your defenses. But, you know, I'm looking at this bishop for my opponent, and I'm like, this guy is stuck. He can't really do anything. He can't go this way at all. I'm resigned to the fact that if he decides to go play a6, I'm probably gonna have to take it because I don't want to deal with this bishop now that I have all these guys on light dark squares around my king. So we'll see what happens there. But basically, you know, cutting off this attack from my opponent's bishop with that move. And I'm starting to feel the pressure a little bit more here. So, you know, he's got an attacker here, an attacker here. He's even got this bishop attacking this pawn push here, and he's starting to encroach a little bit on some of my pieces. So I traded, and instead of retreating my bishop, obviously I can't go here. I could go there, I guess, but, you know, not really looking at that. I was thinking about going all the way back to a2, but I didn't really like the move, so I decided to kind of go on the offense a little more, kind of sticking with the theme I was trying to go with in the beginning. So I played queen at f5. So this bishop's hanging and this bishop's hanging. So if he takes my bishop, I'm prepared to take his bishop. And then my queen is kind of around his king. If I push my pawn here, I can take back with the queen. So I'm kind of creating a little bit more tension, I think, with this move. Now, the engine, the computer thought this wasn't a great move, but that's okay. So instead of my opponent taking the bishop and accepting that trade, he decides to move his bishop backwards to kind of defend it with this pawn here. And that's when I said, okay, we're gonna play bishop to d3. We're gonna line up this battery here. I might have something here with these pawns pushed so forward. I might be able to generate some kind of attack. And he can't push this pawn because my pawn is on h5. So if he pushes the pawn this way, I'm gonna take it. And he can't really take back. I'm going to hit him with check, and you know, my queen is going to be right on g6, basically right in his king's face. So he cannot really just block this. So in fact, there's not really a great way for him to defend this check anymore, I don't think, as far as I can tell. This bishop's way out of the game. This queen is too far away, too many moves to kind of come to the aid here. So he just continues pushing this pawn. And of course, if he takes this pawn, he's creating a couple of attacks. So if he takes this pawn, he's threatening mate on the next move if I don't react to it again. He's also opening up this rook's attack on my bishop after this pawn moves out of the way. So there's a lot of threats here as well. It's kind of a double-edged position, I guess you could say, but again, he's giving me the check that I wanted. So I hit the h7. I hit him with check on h7 with my queen, and he has to move out of the way. And now I start thinking, okay, so you'll see what I do here. I move my rook to e1. So what I'm trying to do is uncover an attack possibly on his king, or cut his king off from escaping down the middle diagonal here. And that's kind of like my plan. I know that this is kind of creating some danger, but I feel like I'm kind of feel like I'm one step ahead. So I move my rook, and my opponent here, you can see our time actually on the screen. I was way below my opponent's time. I only had 3.5 minutes at this point. He had 10 minutes. Ever since I started playing, like the last couple days, I've been taking a long time with my moves. I've been way down on time, and hopefully, you know, I will start being more efficient. But my opponent took 5 minutes here almost, I think, or 4.5 minutes to make this move, which was basically getting his king. I think he wanted to already create the escape route for his king. He didn't want to basically be trapped here if in the future I play queen h8 checking him. He wants to make sure that he can actually get out of the way, or kind of just neutralize my queen since this rook's guarding the file. But of course the problem is that he's uncovering a check already with this move because he's already lining up my rook with his king. So here I just started attacking him. I guess he didn't realize kind of the threats and the pieces that were around when this occurred. So I went ahead and captured on d4 with check. He chooses to go to d7. And of course my queen goes right back into the game. So yeah, he cuts off my queen from the back rank, but my queen is still very much part of this maneuver here. And this is basically the end maneuver of the game. So I play queen to f5 check. And he goes to c7, and I don't know if you guys can follow along. There's another check here that's pretty nice, and it's knight to b5 check. He can take with the queen, but of course that's sacking the queen for a knight. Not really a great trade, but one of the things I liked about this was I'm cutting off his escape from a7 down the corner if he ever chooses to go there. So of course he can't go here. So he's going to go all the way back to b8, and then I hit him with queen f4 check. Just the constant checks, the constant pressure and attacks here. And he actually resigned in this position. And I thought this was forced checkmate after this, because, so obviously he can't go here because of the knight. Let's see, if he goes here, I think I could hit him with the bishop check, right? And so what I was expecting him to do, which turned out to be the best move, was rook to d6, basically blocking it. And I thought this was forced mate anyway, because I thought that this was checkmate in my head when I was playing the game, but it turns out actually the black can actually block with the bishop. And at this point, it's still a very losing position for black, because I can take this rook here. And, you know, this bishop's still pinned. There's another free piece here for me with an uncovered check. So it's really not a good spot for black, but he just resigned there. And this didn't go exactly according to my plan, but it went fairly well. And I think as soon as I was given this opportunity, I think this was right here. The king to e7 was the biggest blunder that he made, because this just started this whole chain reaction of checks. Mostly from the queen, basically the rook, the queen, and the knight all getting in the action. And of course my bishop was available as well, depending on where he moved with his king. And that was the game. It was pretty exciting, I thought. And trying my hand at some more attacking chess. And hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time.